group, the topic that we're going to be diving into today, and this one comes from Jordan Wheeler. It says, I've seen more door-to-door companies doing 18 to 24-month agreements. What is your general pest agreement length? And he's got a poll here. Maybe we should start there. Pros and cons of having an agreement with a term commitment.
A term agreement, 12-month agreement, benefits the customer just as much as it benefits us. We're racking our brains trying to think of why else would we not want to obligate ourselves to the customer and obligate the customer to us?
And I think a lot of companies, when they put customers, quote, under contract, right, they use it as leverage when that customer is like upset or wants to cancel. They'll kind of go to that and they'll say, oh, well, you are under contract, so just want to make sure you've got 6 more months or 8 more months or whatever it is. Welcome to the Bug Bucks Podcast, a podcast designed to help you become a bug money millionaire. Today's episode is brought to you by Bug Bucks Plus, the #1 course designed to help you start and grow your pest control company. I'm your host, Eric Bassett, and of course, got Jake Klaus, my co-host, with me. What's up, dude?
What's up, Eric and my fellow Bug Bucksers?
Dude, anybody that's watching this on like the YouTube channel that we have will see that Jake's wearing a Bug Bucks.
Oh yeah, check it out.
T-shirt.
Check it out.
If you guys just listening on the podcast, just know that Jake is wearing the Bug Bucks t-shirt very well. You look fantastic, dude.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's 2% shirt and 98% Jake. That looks good.
Right. Oh, no, I appreciate that.
Credit where credit's due.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Yeah. I never skip chest day. That's for sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Just legs and everything else.
Just legs and everything else. Dude. Yeah. As long as I hit pec day, I'm good. Yep.
So for you guys listening, we got an awesome topic that we're going to be covering today. But before we dive into that, of course, got to remind everybody listening, the best way to receive new episodes is by subscribing to our show on your preferred podcast platform like Apple, Google, Audible, or Spotify. If you love the show, please leave us a rating and a review. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, go to Bug Bucks. That is BUGBUX. We've got over 4,000 other pest control owners in that group waiting to connect with you and share their thoughts. It's also the best way for you to share your feedback on our show and have your questions highlighted and discussed here on the podcast. So make sure you find us on Facebook and join the group like we've asked you 8,000 times. I feel like we've said that so many times. And every time
Is anybody not subscribing to the podcast by now?
It blows my mind. Sometimes I'll find somebody who listens to the podcast and I'm like, yeah, dude, you should bring up that topic in the Facebook group. And they're like, Facebook group?
What?
I'm like, bud, how how have you listened to the podcast and you're not part of the Facebook group?
Not on the Facebook group. Oh, that's wild.
Yeah. So,
well, I've got some buddies that are not pest control people, friends from church and the fire station that will, on Friday or Sunday they'll be like, dude, that was a great episode. And I'm like, oh yeah, man, I wish I could get you on the Facebook group, but guess what? You're not a PCO. So all you get is the podcast.
Exactly. Yep. So, and speaking of the Facebook group, the topic that we're going to be diving into today comes from the Facebook group. Pre-record, me and Jake were just sifting through these different posts and trying to find one that we thought would be a fun topic to cover. And this one comes from Jordan Wheeler. He says,
"My man, Jordan."
Yeah, dude, he's a top contributor in the Facebook group. So hey, right, credit to him. He says, I've seen more door-to-door companies doing 18 to 24-month agreements. What is your general pest agreement length? And he's got a poll here. And it looks like most of the people in the poll did 12 months. Some people did 18. Nobody did 24, at least not in our group anyway.
Yeah.
Some people said no agreement. And then some people said month to month with 30-day out.
Month to month with 30-day out.
Yeah, as long as you have
a 30-day follow-up?
A 30-day written notice.
Gotcha. Okay.
To bail, you can go anytime.
Right.
So,
okay.
I think it'd be fun to cover this topic and talk pros and cons of having an agreement with a term commitment, and maybe we should start there. Let me set the stage for you guys listening real quick. I think when most people say like contract or customer agreement, they're actually thinking about the term commitment part in a customer agreement, right? So you can have a customer agreement, and you should have a customer agreement. And really what it does is it outlines everything that you are delivering, and it outlines what the customer is paying for, when they're paying, how much they're paying. when those services occur. And then obviously you have some limits of liability in there, which you should definitely have, right?
Yep.
Maybe an arbitration clause and some of the other legal things that are going to protect your company, right? So that is all part of a customer agreement. And then additionally in there, you can have a term commitment. And that term commitment can be conditional based on a discount or something else. That's a pretty common one. But that is going to determine, how long that customer is quote unquote locked in to using your service, right? So those are they can be two completely different things. So if you ever hear me say, like, you should definitely have a customer agreement, what I'm saying is whether or not you have a term commitment as part of that customer agreement, you should always have a customer agreement.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah. So let's kind of jump into maybe just the heart of this question, where is, what is your preferred length for a term agreement, term commitment? And what are the pros and cons of having shorter or longer? So, Jake, you want to kick this one off?
I don't think, I've been in the industry since 2005. So what's that? 19 years. And I've worked for a bunch of different companies. I've got the hats of all the companies I've worked for. Somehow I saved them. I don't know how I saved all those hats, but I've never worked for a company that didn't have some sort of contract or a contracted length of service, right? And it's always been 12 months. That's what I came up on as a 12-month service agreement. And first of all, I'll just say this. First of all, I think that a 12-month service agreement makes sense if for no other reason than this. Pest control is a process, not an event.
Yes.
And so if you have a customer that's got, let's say, a particularly challenging ant issue, or a rodent issue, or something, some pest control situation that's not just a one and done, which, as most of us know, there's not really a one and done situation in pest control. So if for any other reason, having a stipulated length of time for your commitment is, to me, really important, because it could take 3, 4, 5 months for, to get control over some certain pests. And then on top of that, you are competing against Mother Nature, who is relentless, and she will continue to supply an unending amount of pests. So if for no other reason, a 12-month agreement gives you the opportunity to show your value and earn your customers' business. Whereas it would be really easy, and if they're really mad at you, they'll pay the cancellation fee and move on anyway. But at least in this way, they're locked in and committed. You're locked in and committed. And when you explain that during the sales process, hey, pest control is not a process. No, wait, I said that backwards. Pest control is a process, not an event, right?
Yep.
So give us a year to earn your business. It's pest control, not pest eradication. Yada yada, all the things that we tell customers during the sales process. So that's just how I would start out the conversation. Is that having a specified contracted term gives you the opportunity to work your trade and earn the customer's business through your process of doing pest control.
Yes. And maybe that's a really great place to start, is highlighting the philosophy behind even having a term commitment in the first place, right?
I like philosophies. Yeah.
And explaining to the customer why you have it. Because I think in the customer's mind, as soon as someone says, oh yeah, we have this 12-month commitment in our service agreement, they're thinking, oh, like, is that just because you have to lock me in for 12 months? Like, what the heck's the point of that? You know what I mean? And if you explain it to the customer the way that you just did, all of a sudden it starts to make sense, right? The customer's like, oh, I get it. Like, you're trying to make sure that you have a genuine opportunity to provide the best service and me the most value, right? And I remember when I used to, when I was on the phone selling accounts, I would tell customers that in order to receive the intended benefit right? You want to use a pest control service consistently through an entire seasonal cycle, right? So go through all 4 seasons. If you're starting a pest control service in the spring, you have different insects and different pest issues that are going to occur in summer, fall, even in winter, right? You've got overwintering pests, inspections, other things that are going on. So when you're selling a customer, it's like, hey, to receive the most benefits from this, use the service through a full seasonal cycle, which for us is 12 months. Right. You want to kind of reevaluate when you get back to that process. And that's why we have our customers with the 12-month term agreement, is so that by the time you get there, it's kind of ongoing maintenance, right? We're no longer trying to necessarily solve an immediate issue. We're just trying to keep your home up to a standard, which you're investing your time and hard-earned money into, right? And that worked out great for me. I think sharing the philosophy with customers makes a huge difference when it comes to having something in your customer agreement that impacts the way they feel. And you were saying that you never worked for a pest control company who didn't have a service agreement, or I should say a term commitment, right?
Nope.
So when I worked for Rentokil and I was operating in the Western office, Western Exterminators as a brand didn't do term commitments. It was month to month from the first service, right? And I think they might have even had like a 30-day notice to cancel, similar to what popped up in the poll, right? And you'd think that it would be like wildly different, but it wasn't that crazy. And one of the interesting things that I figured out between having a service agreement with a term commitment and no term commitment is that term commitments bring no true value to the customer, right? Necessarily, unless you kind of explain it in the format that you just did. And I think a lot of companies, when they put customers, quote, under contract, right? They use it as leverage when that customer is like upset or wants to cancel, like they'll kind of go to that and they'll say, oh, well, you are under contract, so just want to make sure you've got 6 more months or 8 more months or whatever it is, right? And companies who don't have that can't rely on it or use it as leverage. They have to rely on the value that they bring to the table, right? So one of the pros, if I could even name a pro, of not having a term commitment in your customer agreement is that it forces your customer service team and it forces your field service team to really hone in on the value that they're delivering, because at any moment that customer could skip town, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have term commitments. I'm just saying that's a pro, right?
Right.
That philosophy is kind of the same type of thing of, me and Jake are both married, and obviously,
Well, not to each other.
Not to each other. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm married to Eric's sister. Let's just clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys haven't figured this out already. Let's clarify for a second.
Yeah.
So obviously we both have wives, and we're legally married, right? We've got rings on our fingers, and we have a legal binding document that shows we're married. That document isn't the reason that we're married, right? Our rings that we wear on our fingers aren't the reason that we're loyal husbands, right? We are that way because we have a relationship with our wives, and we made commitments, and we're honorable, right? So for these companies who are thinking whether or not you're going to have term commitments, I just want you to kind of understand from my philosophy that it's not something that you should plan on to use as leverage. It's something that can protect you in the event that things don't work out and you are left in a situation where you as a company have invested a lot of time and money and products and materials into the benefits for a customer, and then maybe they're deciding to skip out before they truly give you a chance to do what you promised you were going to do, and it's going to financially impact your company, right? So
I heard it said another way too, because when we talk about a 12-month agreement or 24, 18 or whatever, but when we talk about an agreement, typically the way that both the salesman and the company owner and the customer, typically the way that they're thinking about it is that agreement primarily only benefits the company. because you're locking the customer in, right? Quote unquote, locking them in. But I heard it explained a different way by the owner of a pest control company that Eric and I used to work for in Boise a lot of years ago. And he was actually an attorney, and then he saw the value in pest control, and he and another guy partnered up and they started a pest control company. And so he had this law background. And one of the things that he told us way back in the day was, a term agreement, 12-month agreement, benefits the customer just as much as it benefits us. Because yes, it binds the customer to us, but the flip side of that coin is that it binds us to the customer. So in the event that, customer says, hey, man, you know what? You guys didn't get rid of my ants. I need you to come back. The company could say, oh, we're not going to do that. Well, why not? Well, we don't have an agreement. You're on your own or whatever. We're going to come back and do a free reservice. So if your company offers like free retreatments, right, or free in between visits for reoccurring or reemerging pests, then a good way to explain it is that the service agreement not only binds the customer to you, but it binds you to your customer, because when they have a recurring issue, you are legally bound by your contract to come back and honor your part of the agreement, just as they are honor bound by the contract to commit to the time commitment. So I think that in all of the years of doing pest control and all of the companies out there, I think probably most people just think of a contract in the terms of, oh, it's a bad thing for the customer. Well, actually it's not. It's a good thing for the customer, because this is America, not Cuba, and we honor contracts here and people have rights, right? So,
yeah. Well, and I think the other common thing, and this is something that we practice at Natura too. So Natura has a 12-month term commitment as part of their service agreement. However, it has a condition, and the condition's optional for new customers. So just kind of give you guys an example. So a new customer calls in, they have a general pest issue, and we look up the size of their house, and we see that, for their size of house, the initial service is probably going to be about $299, and then we're going to be about, $49 a month, right? And if that customer is willing to commit to that term commitment for the first 12 months, then we'll take $100 off that initial service, right? Takes it down to $290, or takes it down from $299 down to $199, their benefit, okay? And if they decide to leave anytime in that 12 months, no harm, no foul, hate to see you go, but because you aren't staying for that promotional term, we're going to ask that you remit that initial discount that we gave you, right? And that's easy. That makes sense. And customers from the beginning can actually say, you know what, I'd rather just pay full price and not have that commitment hanging over my head. Totally fine. I'm good with that too, right? So we give our new customers either or option, which is hilarious if you think about it, because logistically speaking, they're way better off going with the discount first, because if they make it to 12 months, then they get to keep those savings.
But if not, they're paying it back anyway. So
exactly. But it's funny, when that concern comes up from customers who are like, I don't really like contracts, and you're like, oh, that's not a problem. Like, we can just keep that initial service at $299, and then you're just month to month. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And you're like, whatever makes you happy, my guy.
How many times have you been divorced there, Mr. Customer?
It's like, how many
He's afraid of commitment.
You have that probably didn't work out well in your favor.
Yeah.
But so there's little wrinkles in there. And one note that I would, some advice that I would give people, if you're going to have some type of term agreement or term commitment in your contract, and you want to have a cancellation fee, I put this in quotes here. Cancellation fee is like using swear words in our office. We don't.
It's like
say
saying
that.
It's like saying pesticide.
Yes.
Or chemical.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Like, it's
naughty words, naughty cuss words.
We don't say that because it never works out well for you, and it never works out well for the customer either, right? We don't have a cancellation fee. What we have is a particular clause in our agreement that just says, hey, if you take advantage of a promotional discount, but you don't stay for the promotional term, you would just agree to give back that promotional discount, right? It makes sense in the customer's mind. So figure out a better way to say it. Don't say cancellation fee. or anything that sounds like that. That's just not a good way to make the customer, keep the customer happy. Let's talk a little bit more about kind of the second part of this question, which is, going longer than 12 months, right? Let's look at, 18 months versus 24 months and maybe some pros and cons there. What do you think?
So, the only companies that I've ever seen that have long contracts, 18, 24-month contracts,
Mm-hmm.
and I could be totally mistaken. Maybe there's some listeners listening right now who have an 18-month, 24-month contract, and this totally doesn't apply to them, which is cool. But the only companies that I've ever seen that have the 18 and 24-month contract are the big companies that have big door-to-door summer sales teams.
Yep.
And the reason I think, I am surmising, I haven't peeked into the brains of all of these people that are managing these companies, but I surmise that the reason is because they have such high cancellation rates from the door-to-door sales teams. Number one, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the reason why. So they say, we have this chargeback date that's around Thanksgiving, and after that, we lose 45% of these summer sales. And so we're going to we're going to double the contracted length in an attempt to salvage our attrition rate, right?
Yep.
Or to lower the attrition rate. So that's my first summarization. Surmisation. I just made up a new word. The
Perfect.
second reason why I think that they do a 24-month agreement is the opposite side of that coin, right? You have door-to-door teams that come and try to switch your customers over. So you want to have a 24-month agreement so that it makes the contract last even longer. Oh, the summer sales guy says, "Oh, well, when is your contract up?" "Oh, shoot, man, my contract doesn't expire for another 18 months." Well, by that time the guy's forgotten about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a proactive thing and a reactionary thing with those long contracts. But that's just a wild guess.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. Plus, if you think about these door teams, we've seen, and maybe it's not unique to this year, but I've seen a lot of door teams that are kind of having a tough time finding a home at pest control companies, right? You get these big door teams, door-to-door marketing companies. And so these door teams want to be able to provide the most value to the pest control company. So if I'm a door-to-door guy and I say, hey, I'll actually be willing to sell 18 or 24-month contracts for you, well, that's a lot more work for me to do to convince the company or the customer to do that. But it's padding the liability for the company that I'm selling for, right? Just for the same
Mm-hmm.
reasons that you said.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes the door-to-door guy or the door-to-door team more attractive for a company to spend the astronomical amounts that they spend on door-to-door, which brings up that another thing that you said, the cost of these customers canceling, right? When door-to-door companies have a chargeback rate of, November 31st, November 15th, even December or the end of the year, that means that any cancellations that occur after that point, dude, I'm sorry, but you've already
Yep.
paid that door-to-door team that money and
Yep.
you're not getting it back. So
And how
you
many
gotta,
sales reps have we had? Well, I guess we didn't really have this problem too much, but occasionally we would have these sales guys that would tell the customer, the customer calls in to cancel. The customer calls in to cancel 1st of December. Well,
Yep.
the sales guy told me I could cancel after Thanksgiving and it's no problem. And you're like, oh, okay.
I see what you did there,
I
pal.
see what you did there, guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an issue. And so, for these companies, it provides them a little more peace of mind, that if they use a door-to-door company and they've got an 18 to 24 month agreement, that they'll make up the difference, right? They'll actually have a positive ROI
Mm-hmm.
because these door-to-door companies, like if it's your own company, you're still spending 65% to run that door team. If you have a door-to-door marketing company come in, oh, you're spending 95 to 100% plus, which freaking blows my mind every time I hear it.
Yep.
And that means you're in the hole for a while. So the longer that contract is, the better. Um, and obviously, there's some benefits there. The con for maybe both the company and the customer there. I mean, as a customer, you're going to be a lot more wary of that long of commitment. And the longer the commitment goes, the more it weighs on you, right? The more weight it puts on the sale. So it's like if you think security, like 48-month contracts, crazy stuff, 5-year agreements, big commissions, lots of pressure on the customer, right? Pest control might go that direction eventually just to maintain the value that door-to-door companies have to be able to provide,
Right.
and pay for the commissions that they're owed. But I really hope not, because pest control doesn't need to be that complicated.
Right.
It's like, come on, dude, we're not doing anything crazy here. And there is some definite financial investment on the sales side of things for pest control companies and the service side of things, but it's not that wild. Don't have to overdo it.
Yeah, no, and there's even one company that I know of where you get a higher percentage, you get an increase in your commission if you sign up for a 24-month agreement. So, there is incentive there for the sales guys to push that, and we've even had sales guys ask us, "Can we sign up a 24-month agreement?" And we're like, "Why?"
It's like, I'm not paying you anymore on that.
Once you bring them in, it's not the contract that's keeping them here anymore. It's because we freaking rock, and our customers, they like what we do, so they stick around. And I'm not going to pay a higher commission just because you got to sign a longer contract.
Exactly right.
That's
And
just me, though.
No, well, and it kind of starts eventually. It starts to kind of divide and misalign the intentions and the values and benefits for the salesman and the company. At first, you'd think, oh yeah, the company wants that customer to be there for as long as possible, and so does the salesman. But the salesman wants them to be under contract for his commissions, or the company wants the relationship to be good for as long as possible, right? And like we said before, the contract has no actual value to the relationship. It only has value to whoever's owed money, which would be the sales guy.
Right.
So, in theory, it'd be great to be able to have a contract that was as long as possible, that didn't put any undue pressure on the customer, right? But in the pest control world, that's probably going to be around 12 to 18, maybe 24 months. And some customers, I think about some of the add-on, like ancillary services that some companies have now, where it's like general pest, rodent, mosquito, you name it, right? Poop scoop, lawn care.
Yeah. Termite monitoring.
Yeah.
People throw in,
There's another one. So there's a lot of different things that could come into play here, where it's like, yeah, termite monitoring, that's a pretty penny. So you might have a situation there where you're like, hey, we'll give you a significant discount on the termite monitoring, if you do our general pest program and you go under a 36-month agreement, right? And I mean, we could be talking about $1,000 as a promotional discount. So in that kind of scenario, I think it could make sense, right? But
I'm thinking about it from the customer's perspective. I've seen the invoices, and I'm not trying to purposefully diss on anybody's service protocols. I certainly would never do that in a public forum like this. But I've seen this. I've seen the service tickets, the service invoices for some of these big door-to-door companies, where they're just scooping up technicians by the bucket load just to get them, just to get the sales pushed through,
Yep.
And I've seen the service invoices where the notes are did a flush out for ants, and you look at the products that they use, and it's like a Centria, like, well, what? Wait, what? You're spraying a Centria for ants on a quote unquote flush out. So to be the customer that's locked in for 2 years with a company that's using Essentria for odorous house ant flush outs
Yeah.
in quotation marks. Man, that's going to be a long 2 years.
Yeah. Plus, if you think about some of those door-to-door companies that are planning on like, if they're planning on selling,
Mm-hmm.
going through some acquisition, and so they do a 24-month contract so they can cover the commissions for their guys and still have, 12 months of that agreement for the new company that's going to purchase them. That's another thing,
Oh yeah, that's
and then
smart. Yeah.
for that customer, they have to deal with the less than effective service methods of that company. And then they have to deal with whatever the service methods of the acquiring company is,
Yep.
And dude,
And
that's a lot.
there can be a bumpy transition there sometimes too. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, it sounds like a rough marriage,
Yeah, dude,
you know?
that's a really good point. Some of those invoices that we've seen are laughable. Most of them are pretty humorous. Some of them are
Mm-hmm.
like straight up disappointing. You're like,
Yeah.
as a professional, applicator holder, like license holder and associate certified entomologist, like I can't look at that and just not cringe,
Yeah.
you know?
Head scratchers. There's some
Yeah.
head scratchers there.
Yep. So,
Okay, so what about cons? So before the show, Eric and I were talking, and we were thinking, kind of the only thing that we could come up with or for a reason why companies wouldn't want to do a contract and go month to month no contract, is because maybe they're concerned in some way that having the customer sign a contract is a turnoff to the customer and it will cause them to lose business. We're racking our brains trying to think of why else would we not want to obligate ourselves to the customer and obligate the customer to us? And from the discussions that I've heard or that I've seen, typically doesn't it seem like that's the general reason why companies do a no contract?
I think it's that. I think it's a little bit of like I don't know if this is scarcity mindset, if I would really identify it this way. I just think that pest control owners, especially new pest control owners, will project their concerns about contracts and negative experiences they've had with other companies, and they will project those onto their own business.
Right.
And, sometimes that can be good, right? You learn things from other companies and you're like, I'm never going to do that in my company, right? I'm going to be better. I'm going to make improvements. But sometimes I'll hear people like in the Facebook group and they'll say, oh, I would never have a term agreement. Like that's just asking for trouble. That's asking for a bad Google review. That's asking for, lawsuits. And is it even worth going after in court and all these other things? And so I can sense that there's some animosity, there's some fear there surrounding all of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, me and Jay can probably tell you, like we've been in business for over 10 years. We've always had a 12-month promotional term agreement as part of our customer contract. And very, very rare. I mean, we don't really have any bad reviews about our term commitments.
Yeah, I can't
We don't
think of
go
a
to court
single.
over these.
Yeah. No.
So, and it's we coach and teach our team that we don't use those as leverage. It's a detail and needs to be included in the conversation if someone cancels. But we don't use those as leverage over
No.
somebody who's had a bad experience. That's not how that works. So yeah, I think it's part of it is fear, and maybe just kind of projecting from other bad experiences that people have had with contracts.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, dude, this has been a good conversation. It's always fun to kind of dive into the Facebook group, and kind of pick these apart a little bit, and kind of see some of these comments and hear some other viewers and listeners' feedback on this. So if you guys have feedback on contracts, or if there's kind of another side of this that you want us to hash out and dive into, go tell us in the Facebook group. And of course, before we let you guys go, we just want to say thank you for listening in. If you have a manager or a coworker who would benefit from listening to this episode, the best way to say thank you to us is to share this episode with them. It is brought to you by BugBucks Plus, the #1 course designed to help you start and grow your pest control company. And of course, if you haven't joined the Facebook group yet, just go join it. It's awesome. I promise.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Jump in there.
Yep. Lots of information and great connections in that group. Of course, thanks again for listening in. And until next time, keep building those pest control companies.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please show your support by subscribing and leaving us a 5-star rating. Thank you. And we'll catch you on next week's episode.